is the new film from director Damien Chazelle. It stars Ryan Gosling as Neil Armstrong, and this film is a biographical tale of how Neil Armstrong got involved in the NASA program trying to get up to the moon, be the first person to walk on the moon. But also this movie tries to focus on how Neil Armstrong was feeling, what he was going through as a person at that time. I was really surprised when I heard that Damien Chazelle was making this film because I really love Whiplash and I really love La La Land, and I think those two are really great original films. So to hear that Damien Chazelle was suddenly going to a biography, I was quite surprised by that, and I was interested to see what he could do with it, and I was blown away by this film, because this isn't really your typical biography film where they go over a famous event and then they show you on the big screen, like this is how they do it. This movie focuses mainly on Neil Armstrong as a person. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, this movie really focuses on Neil Armstrong as a person. He was going through a lot at that time, and though Ryan Gosling's performance is really subdued, and a lot of people could probably watch that and be like, well, how am I supposed to get attached to that? But really, I was just sitting there and analyzing his performance and being like, this is a really complex man. Like, Neil Armstrong was going through a lot, you can tell, but he's just trying to hide it. He's trying to stay composed. He's trying to stay normal. He's trying to move on. But due to a tragedy that happened in his life, at certain points he's just wanting to break down. Like, you can kind of tell, but he has to continuously distract himself. He has to try to move forward even though he really can't let go. And it's really amazing to see Ryan Gosling do that. I know Ryan Gosling is famous for doing more subdued performances, but in this one, it really does make me see Neil Armstrong in a whole new light now. And I gotta give huge props to not just Damien Chazelle for making it that way, but also Ryan Gosling's performance. Like, I think he really nailed it. I think he did a perfect portrayal of Neil Armstrong. In all honesty, I think he did a fantastic job. It's one of the most touching performances I've seen. And he doesn't even do a whole lot of, like, emotional breakdowns or cryings or, like, big speeches. Like, a lot of it is just because of how human he feels, because of how realistically reserved he is, that I could actually really relate to. Like, I was seeing him in this film, and there was a part of him that really reminded me of me in a lot of situations. I was like, oh my god, like, you can tell there's something wrong there. You can tell he's covering stuff up. And also, I really love the portrayal of his wife. Claire Foy did an excellent job in a film called Unsane that came out earlier this year, but in this one, I think I like her performance maybe a little bit more, because she starts off normal, but as the film progresses and as that date kind of draws near when they have to go up to the moon, you can tell that she's on the verge all the time of just freaking out at any moment because she's so scared, but Neil is just so calm about it. So to see them interact with each other, Neil just trying to be so calm and composed, but then she's just nervous and anxious, you can tell, but she's also trying to stay composed. But Neil Armstrong's obviously doing a much better job at that. It's such an interesting dynamic, and I think their chemistry is so good. I think they both deserve a lot of recognition for their performances. Everyone in this movie really does a good job, but it's mainly those two that really propel this film to the next level. Also, Jason Clarke did a really good job here. As an actor, he's been a little on and off. He's done some stuff I really like, then some stuff that's a little, I don't really know how to feel about that. But this one is a really good role for him. Like, I really liked him in this film, seeing how he tries to connect with Neil Armstrong as a friend, and they are friends, but Neil is definitely more distant than he would like, and he just wants to be there for his friend, but Neil is just so distant. It's just so fascinating to see, going back to Neil Armstrong and Ryan Gosling's performance, just seeing how Neil interacts with other people. At times he's just so willing to be their friend, but then other time he just shuts off completely and just doesn't want anything to do with anyone. And there's just this really great theme of death in this film, how people handle it, how people decide to cope with it, and how quickly it can happen as well. Like, it's really fascinating, really, how Damien Chazelle handled this film, and I gotta give huge props to him, because this is why I love this movie a lot more than other biographies, is that he obviously tells it beat for beat, like, okay, this is what happened, here's some stuff that was going on in that time, and that's all important, but at the end of the day, this movie's not focused on glorifying that as, like, this was so important for America. Even though they mention it, it's really more so just about honoring Neil Armstrong as a person and showing what he was going through as a human being. And I love that. There's so many great other filmmaking moments as well, like the cinematography is outstanding. I heard that they use, like, little CGI throughout this film also, which is, that's insane to me, okay? This movie, they go up into space and they have spacecrafts, but they didn't use CGI. Like, that's insane. Like, you see other movies that have that, and it doesn't look that good, but then you see this, and it looks so great, it looks so real. because it was, and they didn't use any CGI at all. It's like, how did they do that? Like, oh my god. It just adds a lot of suspense too, because even though you know what happens at the end of the day, there's just a lot of other things going on, like leading up to that, the tests that actually get you in suspense, like, oh god, are they gonna make it out of this? Like, oh wait, Neil Armstrong, of course he goes up there, but why am I in suspense so much? I know what's going to happen. It's because Damien Chazelle did a really good job as a filmmaker. The score by Justin Hurwitz is amazing. He's really getting up on my list as far as like some of my favorite composers. I think he needs to do a little bit more before he gets into like an official top 10 or anything, but he's really going there, man. He's got a great career in his future. His music here is so enchanting to listen to, and it fits the theme of the film so well. It fits each scene so well. You can tell that Damien Chazelle and Justin Hurwitz, because they've been friends since college, they have a really great vibe with each other. Like, they know exactly what to do together with this music. This movie has a really great sense of treating everything they do kind of workmanlike, so something can happen where you're like, if I was in that situation, I'd probably be losing it, but since this is NASA and they kind of know what they signed up for, they treat it just so normally. Like, kind of making you feel like, wait, you guys aren't freaked out by that? Like, what? Like, that's insane to me, but that's obviously all in Damien Chazelle's intention, just making it seem so workmanlike, like, yeah, we gotta do this, it's our job. So there's a lot of drama when it comes to that, but then there's also a couple small moments of levity, mainly from Gosling's children, and they're really funny. There's a couple funny moments that really work, but I'd say for the most part this is definitely a more drama film, and the drama really works. There's one moment that happens, I can't spoil it obviously because I don't know if it's real or not, but something happens to where I was like, oh man, and it just really hit me. It really hit me, and I can't find anything that says if it's real or fake or not. A lot of people are saying, well, maybe it's fake, but we're not entirely sure. So maybe this was just made for the film, but with how they were creating the character, with how they were treating it, it just seems so realistic enough that that did happen. And I love that. It just made me, once again, it just made me connect to Neil Armstrong in a way that I never expected to. And if it's fake, then bravo to Damien Chazelle for coming up with a great idea. If it's real, then I'm glad that they got the word out that that was real. By the end of this film, I felt like I could breathe because I was just in suspense throughout a lot of it, especially near that end bit. And also just, I was allowed to breathe because of emotional reasons, because I was just really latched on to the Neil Armstrong performance in this film. I do have to say, though, that there are a couple characters that I think get a little less development than needed, a couple other side characters that maybe they could have used a bit more because of certain things that happen, but also Corey Stoll as Buzz Aldrin, though I do think his performance was good and I liked his addition, I think they could have done a little bit more with him, because it just seemed like the two scenes he was in before they get to the nitty-gritty near the end, it just seemed like, well, I know exactly what's going on here, and I'm just going to speak really pridefully about that, and then Neil Armstrong says something to kind of shut him down. It just didn't really feel like the strongest way to introduce them and their dynamic, even though overall I did like seeing Corey Stoll play him. I think they could have done a little bit more with him to make it a little stronger. That being said, though, like, this movie's just so technically well made, it's so well scored by Hurwitz, it's so well directed, and well written, too. There's no, like, great lines of dialogue or anything that are just so profound that'll make you think for days or anything, but the thing about the writing is just how they write the Neil Armstrong character to be so subdued, but then you can see through his face, like, Gosling's performance, just you can tell the emotions that he's trying to hide and be composed about. This movie just really speaks to me on that level. I'm gonna give First Man an A, though I think those characters that I mentioned earlier, the minor ones, could have been developed a little bit more. I really felt really strongly about this film. I felt like I connected to Neil Armstrong, I felt like I connected to his wife, I felt like I was connected to the story, and I, for a while, just completely forgot about what happened in the past because I was just so invested and so in suspense of what was going on. It helps that this film is basically all practical too, from what I've heard. Just there's definitely a sense of realism there. But if you've seen First Man, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.